7:30 p.m., September 19th, 2022, and I call the meeting to order. Robin, would you do the roll call?
Sure. Oxman?
Here.
Valdez?
Here.
Brown?
Here.
Risch?
Here.
Heaney?
You got it.
Schneider?
Here.
And Bortles.
Okay, Robin, would you introduce our guest?
So we don't have a guest, we have a new employee. This is Baxter Richardson. He is the new Economic Development Specialist for the City of Golden in our department. He will be assisting DDA, Economic Development Bureau, and a whole bunch of other things. And he comes to us from Jefferson County Economic Development Corporation. So he already knows Golden really, really well.
Oh, awesome.
First day, made him have an evening meeting.
Welcome.
We're gonna make it run late too.
Oh, no.
Drag it out till 11 o'clock at night.
It's only council.
I'm out.
Right?
So actually, could you guys just introduce yourselves to Baxter so he knows your various roles in the community? Why don't you start?
My name is Heather Schneider. I'm the executive director of the Golden Civic Foundation, and then I'm Golden Native and local.
I'm Noah. I have a restaurant in town called Mozurani. Dean and I partnered on Minor Saloon back in the day. I've lived here for 10-ish years. Worked with Golden Moon Distillery prior to that, and now I sit on DDA.
I'm JJ Risch. I'm a resident. Don't own a business, but I live in the DDA district.
And I'm Casey Brown. I'm a city councilor and the mayor's appointee to the DDA, and I represent District 2, which is the north half of town, which Karen used to represent before me.
I'm Dean Valdez. I own a few restaurants in town, Minor Saloon, Oak Apple Grill and Smokehouse, Bella Calabri, Italian restaurant, a place called the Brick Room. Own some commercial properties in downtown Golden, and sort of tenants, and I've been on the DDA since its inception, before it was even a DDA, when it was a DDA task force. And right now I'm the chair of the Golden Chamber of Commerce as well.
My name is Karen Oxman. I'm currently the chair of the DDA. This is my first term on the DDA, and I, like JJ, am a resident who lives in the DDA area. I try to do a lot of volunteer work in the city, and I was glad to be elected to this position.
And John, do you want to describe yourself?
Well, that's an open-ended question.
In terms of your DD. John Bortles, Woody's Pizza.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay. Could I have a motion to approve the September 19th, 2022 agenda?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Is there any public comment?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Consent agenda. The approval of the minutes of August 15th, 2022's business meeting. Could I have a motion, or were there any corrections anybody found?
I move to approve the minutes.
Thanks, Casey. Second?
I second. Oh,
Okay.
go ahead. You should second.
I'll make it Noah. Just a little
You're gonna
bit.
make it
I'm
no.
like ready.
All in
I'm gonna make
favor?
it Noah.
All in favor?
Aye.
And that passes. And we are down to item 6, the business agenda, Mesa Meadows Land Company Special Benefit Grant Application.
Would our guests come to?
Oh, thank you for the invitation.
Sarah Lebowski from
Mesa Meadows Land Company. Thanks for considering my request. Thank you guys for everything you do. I know this is a lot of time commitment and reading, and also we really appreciate the power washing. I don't know if you've ever been to a city without power washing. It's not good, so keep it up. Thank you. We appreciate you. I'm applying for a grant for $27,860, which is much more than the $2,500 grants. The entire paint project is going to be about $59,000, just the painting of the building and the redo of the mural. And the mural was defaced recently, so that's another $1,000. Someone carved swastikas into the mural and defaced Mr. Coors. So that's another $1,000. So when you divide 27,860 by 13, which is the number of tenants, small businesses, and not-for-profits in the building, that's only $2,143 per tenant. So now I'm under the limit. All of Mesa Meadows properties are in the DDA zone. So our tax bill for the DDA Special Tax District comes to about $12,000 each year, and we're happy to pay for it. It'd be great to have some of it back. The last grant Mesa Meadows received from the DDA was approved in January of 2018. That was for $29,001.66. That was half of a $58,000 project to redo the Key Bank building awning and painting and the 1200 Washington building paint job, which is Guzelle. Why I'm asking you for a weird grant that's so special is, you know, I'm special. But also, TIF financing isn't feasible for this because that's only for new construction. Valuation of the property is not going to increase significantly based on this. The alternative is I could have the 13 businesses in the building apply for small grants, but that seems like a huge amount of unnecessary work for all of us. Mesa Meadows doesn't charge CAM fees, so the tenants won't pay us back for any of this, so Mesa Meadows is covering it. The goal here is to have the building and parking lot refreshed for Christmas. The city's going to repave the lot, I think in a couple weeks. We'll have the building redone, the murals redone. It's just going to be beautiful, and I think really nice for town because that's about our only surface lot right now, with the Miners Alley Square situation being a construction zone mostly. So we'll have new pavement, a fresh building, lots of Christmas lights. It'll just be wonderful. So Mesa Meadows, we're doing our best to keep Golden beautiful. We want to keep our buildings in good repair, fresh paint. The historic mural on 1990 on 13th was commissioned in 1993. It's become an icon, so we got to keep it up and take care of it and keep the vandalism off. We are hoping the DDA will approve this request so we can continue upgrading downtown for projects like this that don't have a lot of return for the landlord. Things that are coming up is the Wild West Oktoberfest on Saturday. I hope you'll be there. It'll be in the Foss lots. I really enjoy cleaning out my dumpsters and dumpster enclosures. That's kind of expensive because, you know, we can't just blast it all out. It needs to be sucked up. I have some historic apartment renovations that are underway. They'll be done soon. We'd like to go above and beyond when we can. Of course, Miners Alley is going to move, and we'll need to do something with that and all the other fun projects that come along with the nature of the business. So that's my spiel. Any questions?
I have a question on the mural. It was talking about high-tech clear coat
Mhm.
on top. Will that help with cleaning up any vandalism that
So
might
it
have been?
helps with spray paint, but the whoever did it scratched it into the stucco. So we've never had it vandalized before. It's 29 years old, so it helps with fading, but not with people scratching.
Okay, but for weathering, regular weathering and that sort of thing, the clear coat then helps preserve it for a longer period of time. Was it clear coated before?
It was. You know, technology's evolved. We haven't, I think we did it 10 years ago, and that's that south-facing wall, so it gets pretty beat up. So we're hoping maybe we'll get 15 years out of this go instead of just 10.
Thank you.
I included some recent photos. The painting's already going on, so I included in the packet. You can go down and see it, but I took some photos last week, so they're in the packet.
That's also special about my grant. I know I'm supposed to apply before we do it, but you know, project management, let's get it done when we can.
Any questions?
I'll ask another question. And I do remember the other grant that we did back some years ago. How often have we done kind of over and above grants of this type?
4.
Well, what Ms. Lebowski mentioned was, did you mention both of the earlier
Yes,
ones?
she did.
Right, that was a 2018. We combined
Right,
both
so
of
that
those.
was 2 projects. So it was 3 or 4, depending on how you look at it. One for the Ace High front and back, one for the Ace High trash enclosure building, and one for the corner of 12th and Washington and the Key Bank building over at. So 3 or 4, depending on how you count them.
But all those weren't Sarah's. The one was
Right.
Stillman.
The
Two
second
of them-
2 were, and
two
the
were.
other 2 were Mike Stillman.
It's really got a lot of requests.
No, but it.
Not over and above,
Right.
not very large ones.
It is a topic that comes up and has come up in your discussion about, and we're hoping that the whole grant program gets reviewed late this year, early next year. and the fact that a grant program of the size that, for the smaller facade grants is really for, it's tended to be signs or some sort of, if you have a really narrow building. So one of the things that the board, I think, has mentioned in the last couple of meetings is, should we be thinking as we go forward in grants about a broader spectrum of how they would benefit folks, and that's the interaction with the property owners and businesses that Robin is going to initiate. So it's kind of been, it might be desirable on our part, which is a euphemism for, I think it would be desirable on our part to have a grant program that anticipates some of these bigger ones.
Oh, and we'd be happy to take payment over a couple years if that would help.
No, sir, I think it's good that I appreciate you reiterating that the taxpayer money, your money, that you contributed to this fund, because I think, and it's gonna, I'm gonna mention this when we have a later discussion tonight about other projects, because it's a reminder of where that money's coming from. So thanks for that.
Oh, anytime.
So, some more board discussion on this and direction?
So if we were to take, we have a remaining budget of 20,000, what would the staff's recommendation be if we were to fund it in full?
No, there is no budget at all for these special grants.
Oh, there isn't, okay.
It would just come out of your contingency.
Okay,
But most of your other grant programs are way undersubscribed for the year.
okay.
You can afford it if you want to do the whole amount.
Okay.
John, did you have something?
Well, I'm always just procedurally trying to make sure I speak at the right time. Are we going to talk about this later on when we talk about kind of grand scheme, macro level projects that we're putting in our budget, or do you want to kind of get into the nitty-gritty now?
Well, there's two ways to go about it. If the board wasn't ready to make a decision, because, and it's in part based on staff's suggestion that the project has gone forward because of timing and they needed to get it done before winter. If the board as a whole wanted to make this discussion part of the discussion about the budget or the grant program, that's your prerogative. You don't have to make a decision tonight, but you could if you want to. And you could grant anywhere from 0 to all of what's requested.
Right.
Do we have
Yeah, the only thing on my mind that I'll say, and I was going to bring it up when we talk kind of bigger picture, is just when we kind of go out of our definition or guidelines of the grant program, you know, again, this is a worthy project, makes a lot of sense, but, you know, had others known that they could apply for something outside of the bounds of those guidelines, maybe we would have had a more competitive field of applications. Just thinking out loud there.
Well, I kind of go back to, because we've had this discussion before, you know, sometimes a grant for a 10 linear foot space would be X, and if you had a 100-foot linear space, it shouldn't be the same as the 10-foot linear space. And just for example, you know, on things we've talked about before, it's sometimes it's order of magnitude of the request. So if you have a retail shop that's 10 feet, you know, are you under the same restrictions, if you will, of someone with 100 foot? And I think the answer would be no, but.
Right.
So I think it comes down to, do you want to, and with or without the commitment that you really want to address your grant program before, soon, do you want to make another one-off decision now because the project is happening and you have the money, and there aren't that many really big buildings downtown that are in the same situation. The A-size structure and this one were the two biggest ones that have needed fairly major painting work in the last couple of years. These are almost as big. So that's kind of the issue. Do you want to make a yes or no decision tonight? Do you want to ask them generously to come back when you talk over the whole grant program more?
No, wanna stifle, I don't wanna stop the process. Because I feel like the revision of the grant guidelines isn't completely straightforward. And, this is a significant project that checks all the boxes, that is reasonable, we have a budget for it, and I would rather proceed and approve it without, stopping the process, because it needs to be done.
I agree.
I mean, I think that, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Kim.
So I really appreciate the presentation that you've given to us, and something that you said struck me as being very workable. How would everyone feel about half in the current budget, because we have the money, and half in the 2023 budget, because we will have the money then? And I agree, it's almost that whole block, so it is pretty important to the downtown. And the project is not gonna stop if we give nothing. It's still gonna go on, because it's being done as we speak. Entertaining any of your thoughts on that?
Well, one thing I was gonna say is, we've got this 2,500 thing for a grant for an awning or something. I don't think it's ever been completely described what that really is for, and maybe I'm wrong. But, being on this DDA since its inception, we've always had the guideline of, we're gonna make decisions on a case-by-case basis if we feel it's the right thing to do for the money. So I don't think, the $2,500 just seems kind of arbitrary to me, to be honest with you. And the way you explained it, you could have all your tenants apply for it and that just be kind of a ridiculous administrative feat to have to do that. So, I guess where we're at is answering your question and/or doing a motion to approve, I would think.
Yeah.
And then I think, so when, Karen, I guess my question would be in terms of the money, it would just be delaying the payment. I mean, we have the money, right, in this budget, just we have to have the
Yes, we
budget.
do.
Well, especially with other things coming under budget too.
Right, right.
Yes.
Pay for it now, and if we're changing rules and all, pay for it probably again. So, that being said, then you have this holdover from 2022 that pops into the thinking. I'd rather go ahead and grant the entire amount, or the entire amount that we were going to grant, whether that's what was asked for or less than, and do it now.
I mean, it's still, you're still putting 50% of the money, so.
And it would be cleaner to get it all done. Okay, so then, I guess if we've decided that part of it, how much do we want to give?
Well, I think Sarah had a good mathematical equation that if all of her tenants applied, it's under the $2,500 limit, we'll put 50% toward it. So I would motion to do the full amount for those reasons.
Second.
So is that a motion?
Oh, okay. I officially motion that we approve Mesa Meadows Land Company's request for a grant for $27,860.
Okay, second?
Second.
Dean? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Sarah, thanks.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it. See you guys around. Thanks so much.
You bet.
Okay,
Real quick, just to follow up on that, I just want to emphasize for the grants committee, which I know I'm on and we can talk about later, but if we're going to do it on a case-by-case basis and open it up to any number for any reason, we got to clarify that to the other businesses and potential applicants, because I bet you a lot of people look at that $2,500 and say, hey, that's not worth my time, when in reality, we are willing to give so much more. So I really think we've got to clean that up.
Duly noted
And head nods.
and agreed. People are agreeing.
And also realizing that 2,500 hasn't changed in, how many years have we had?
Well,
7.
5 years at least since I've been here.
7-ish.
yeah, I was gonna say 7 years. Okay. Community Marketing Program Project Proposal.
Okay, Madam Chair, that's my item. Is that okay?
No, I was gonna give the context.
Okay, go
While we're
ahead.
getting
You
ready.
can give context.
So, as you'll recall, there was a period of time where community marketing had a community partnering stipend, let's say. And we've changed that in recent years, because 2 years ago, we gave them the stipend and we said, but if you have a really cool idea, you should come back. And so for the 2022 budget, we changed that they are not part of community partnering. There's a $20,000 line item, which equates to the 10,000 stipend we gave them in 2021 and the $10,000 line item. And so under that context, there was a line item that talks about community marketing support, and we have a proposal.
Okay, so by way of additional context, the Visit Golden Community Marketing Program, as part of their strategic plan, has going to do a tourism economic impact study for the all of Golden, because remember, Visit Golden is all of Golden, and that is going to result in, like, where the sort of confirm where visitors are coming using cell phone and other GIS data, what they're spending, potentially category some demographics to get a better idea, a little more, or a lot more specific ideas of what the tourism market looks like, what's the direct jobs, indirect, induced, spending by category, and so forth, and more detailed than that. And that is proposed to be by a firm called Anderson Analytics. I put some information in your packet. Here's a little community profile. And I started thinking, based on some conversations that Dean had and so forth that we've had at Visit Golden, that perhaps while that citywide analysis is going on, it could be useful to downtown to have sort of a duplicate analysis of downtown specifically. It could help the DDA in its priorities to know a little bit or a lot more about the visitor economy, what percentage maybe it is of the total Golden economy. They're going to see if they can figure that one out. And so I requested a, what would it cost for an additional analysis similar but focused just on downtown? That would be $4,000 on top of the 13, so 13,900, whatever, for all of Golden, and then 4,000 for downtown. And the reason is, it has to do with buying additional data. You would create a separate set of polygons to just focus in on downtown. There'd be a set of polygons, that's how data is collected. For Golden, another one for downtown. And actually, there's a third polygon we could get. We haven't figured out what that would be yet. So you would get a profile, and they use data from something called Datafy, and I just made one copy of each, but you could pass it around. So here's what Datafy would look like, and this is an example of an analysis of the impact of, I guess, a Bible college in Woodland Park. This company's out of Colorado Springs. They do a lot of work around the state, and they sent this over so you could just, this is not your report would look like, but you could see what something would look. This was an economic analysis, impact analysis of this Bible college on Woodland Park's economy. So they could get at, like, length of stay of visitors at lodging. They could get some information on what they're doing. Are they going to lodging and also a restaurant, or whatever it is they're doing? It would give you more of a profile of visitation, city versus downtown. They would do a narrative and analytic of what it all means. The phase 2 would translate the data into spending downtown by sort of major category: lodging, pure retail, food and beverage. They run things through an economic analysis, a database called IMPLAN. It gets really technical, but they can begin to get some very specific information on downtown. They also think it's possible with the data they would purchase to go do a look back of a few years, potentially as much as 5 years, which, if possible, would give an idea of what things were like before COVID, during COVID, after COVID. And so total spending by year, and so forth. So I thought, based on some conversations, just generally as you're looking at your spending priorities, this information, that could be very helpful to the DDA board. It could be made available to the community for all the businesses to use in their business planning. Dean, Woody, Noah, anybody else, to try to understand the visitor market and accommodate the business plan. And for $4,000, it doesn't seem too expensive, given all that. So I'm happy to answer questions and ask and get your input and some potential direction of what you might like to do.
I'm curious, oh,
Sorry. Who has to approve the 13.9?
That's in the Visit Golden budget, so it's all.
They're already paying the
Yeah,
13.9.
they're already
so
paying
it's an extra
$13.9.
$4,000.
Or have they agreed to it yet?
It's in their budget, and they have the proposal, so.
When did this, I was curious when it came up, because I mean, I've been at the Visit Golden meetings, I don't recall even hearing about it.
It's in the strategic plan. I'd have to go back and
Okay.
look. It's in the strategic plan.
'Cause-
It hasn't been
'cause
done yet.
The last meeting, it wasn't discussed, so I'm just,
It's part of the plan.
I'll ask
I
my
have to-
question after you know, because I don't want to,
Oh, that was just my question. Like, we're not trying to pay the whole song.
No, the only,
original 4,000.
if you wanted to, is, do you think this type of analysis would be useful to you as a board and downtown as a whole? And if so, would you want to cover the additional $4,000 to buy the separate polygon and analysis of downtown? So the financial ask for you is $4,000.
And
Wow, I
is it
think-
true that we expect this to be the only request this year, given, as JJ's saying, the year is winding down?
I believe so. Holidays are coming, so I'm not sure if there'd be anything in addition for holidays. So those are stuff that's all being planned right now.
I feel like it's a little bit nebulous, like we're kind of just throwing a dart for that 4,000. And like, if we're gonna buy that, I'd like to know what are the goals that we want to achieve out of the data that we're gonna get. You know, we could just get fed a lot of data and not know what to do with it. And then my other insight to that is I think, maybe I'm wrong, Visit Golden, you know, it seems like that's in their periphery of to pay for it, the extra amount, because that's what their job, you know, that's one of their goal, you know, one of their main missions in that. So I don't agree with that extra spending for 4,000 because it's too nebulous for me.
JJ?
You mentioned the word downtown many times. Are you considering the entire DDA boundary? Because, let's say, Goosetown is, part of it anyway, is in our boundaries, but most people wouldn't consider that to be downtown. You know, coming on up Washington towards 58, that's in our boundaries. But a lot of people wouldn't, you know, they think of downtown as between 10th and 14th, basically, and on Washington, and maybe a block or two off. So if we were gonna do something, I definitely would want to include every
Oh, I agree.
area of our, that is covered by our particular organization. If we had a more focused, and I think it's just a more focused bit of data, you know, that rather than having one of us have to go through the big mound of data, is I guess that's what you're paying for, you know, $4,000. It's just getting it a little bit more concentrated on the particular area that we cover. Is that correct?
Yes, DDA boundaries would be the DDA polygon.
Do you anticipate that there would be a specific scope of work that Visit Golden would be approving?
Well, what's included in the,
I didn't read it because I didn't work after the packet went out.
this is
So-
the proposed scope of work, not that, that's traffic count.
it's just one pager, isn't it? So I just, okay, so I agree with Heather that if they're doing it for Golden, then downtown will be, and thus DDA boundary, maybe not specifically, downtown should be included in that. I mean, so the extra 4,000, I don't understand why it would cost that.
It
But
would
that's,
not be separated out, it would be, everything would be analyzed on the
Okay.
city as a whole.
okay, so so that was just kind of a
Just-
comment about the downtown. But my thing is, we get data from the Coors tours, like how many people come. So for those, I'll share some information for being on the Visit Golden meetings. About 75% of people that take the tour, and it seems to be pretty good data in terms of statistically valid, 75% of the visitors do come into the city and spend money. And then it breaks it down by restaurants, retail, et cetera. So it's a pretty good data set from Coors data. So we get that from Coors tours. The visitor center collects data on their visitors who walk in there and say, hey, I'm from Texas or California. So that's another data point we have. So I'm just struggling with, in getting, I think what Heather said, I don't know what we would do with this data. I mean, we're gonna have this information that just intuitively, we all kind of know, because we're business owners, that we know that who comes in our place, we have a good feel for that, coupled with the core tour data, the visitor center data, and then just, kind of your gut feel of understanding your customers. So I just don't know, once you get the data for $14,000 or $18,000, what we're gonna do with it. It's like,
Well, they
oh,
would
that's good to know, okay, what are we gonna, and some of the stuff here, that I have no idea, how they're gonna know total full-time and part-time jobs being generated by tourism. No, I'm not gonna believe any data you give me for that. Employee salaries and benefits and self-employment, no. I mean, I can talk to a couple of my business friends and say, let's get an idea what this is, because we already know that. I just don't understand what we're gonna do with that kind of money for that. And then I'm gonna also say this, because I'm on the Visit Golden group. I'm not aware of us spending that kind of money, and I think personally, I just don't think it's worth it. Because it's like the cost to the benefit, I'm not sure what benefit we're gonna get. If we're gonna get a benefit that says, hey, we don't have anybody from Texas coming here, let's go spend money on advertising to Texas, then that would be a benefit. But I think we already know that.
Or maybe even an implementation plan, like we have all these great studies, and then it just kind of stops. So how are we gonna implement that data? Recruit more people from Texas, not that we're.
For example.
For example.
I mean, that's kind of where I'm at, just some of the stuff there that they're promising, that there's really little value. And then, visitor room nights, well, I mean, if we really wanted to, we could get the hotels together and say, how many people are out of town? Without even giving, they could say, 40% are out of the state or something like that. I think we could get that. Anyway, that's just my thoughts.
All good?
Well, I'm definitely curious, but I guess I too am just not exactly clear on what it is we get for the 4,000 and what level of detail, and then what we do with that information too. But I'm totally curious. I just don't have a great sense of what it is precisely we're buying for the 4,000. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. Would it be helpful if you wanted, is the direction to get some more specificity of the exact, more specific than what I just mentioned to you?
Yeah.
Would you not like me to pursue that? It's whatever you prefer.
Well, maybe I'm alone on that one. I would find it interesting to get more detail of what precisely would be you'd be getting with that 4,000. Because you're right, if they cover the whole city, but does that mean the information they're giving Visit Golden is just citywide, and so you would have like a subset that says here's the
It would
downtown
not
portion?
be a subset. It would not be by neighborhood. We were wondering if it would be helpful for you to have the subset of downtown. The data and the analysis for the Visit Golden piece would be the entire city, not broken out by area.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, but then we pay for the extra and we get,
Then you get the same data, but just for downtown, again, the polygon thing,
yeah.
on the DDA boundaries, and then you get the same analysis just for downtown. You could see how downtown compares to the city as a whole.
And that would be interesting. I think that'd be interesting. And I would be interested if how specific the different businesses are, right? And I mean, we know Coors, but I've always wondered, like, what does tubing contribute? I mean, people always have different opinions that it contributes nothing or it's everything, right? So
I'd have to ask whether they break that one out. I don't know. I don't know
but
about
that's
that
the
one.
kind of
Those are
thing I think I would be interested in if
I
they
could
could
ask
say
that
it,
one.
right?
It's in our boundaries, so, yeah.
So I don't know. The answer is, at some point, with very specific businesses, there are privacy issues. So, I mean, some of that information is available from the city finance department. They do it by categories, by neighborhood, but they are very careful to protect specific businesses so that it's not Noah's business and your business and John's business, because those are some private, they, group them into categories, restaurants, retail. I don't know where tubing would fall
Well,
out.
and you don't have to pay for it too, but that's the big question, right? What is
Right,
that
you don't have
contributing?
to rent a
Who's
tube to go
being drawn
tubing.
here to come tubing, and what else happens with those? So I think those are the kind of things I'd be super interested in, but I'm not totally sure we get that out of the.
So I love data, and I understand that. I love to look at data and stuff. So one thing I wanted to share with you all, I asked a couple of meetings ago at the Visit Gold meeting, we always get the sales tax data. And it's broken out different ways, and it's broken out downtown, South Golden, et cetera. and you see that, and you see trends. And then it's also broken out by category, restaurants. But that restaurants include everything from McDonald's to No Sue Ramen, right? It includes that. But I specifically asked, let's get like a marketing analyst perspective, because they have the data with the city. And you can still respect confidentiality of different groups. So you have like restaurants. And so Robin was able to give us that the last meeting in terms of what the mix of sales tax comes from, and thus the mix of businesses, like how much is restaurants in downtown, how much is this? But I've also asked to go further than that and say, what are the trends, okay? Are restaurants up, and our same sales restaurant, or are restaurants up because we've got 3 new restaurants in town now? I wanna go a little deeper and find out the analytics behind the data to see how various categories are performing. So I think we have the data via our sales tax data internally for someone to do, because this talks about another local tax revenue attributable to tourist and visitor, annual sales tax, lodging tax. I mean, we have a lot of that data from our sales tax. Now, whether, do we know if it's from a tourist or a local resident, I don't know, I mean.
Well, that would not come from the sales tax data that the city collects. And going forward, the finance department is going to prepare a monthly downtown report by that category that the categories by downtown.
So,
By-
for example, the key to this conversation is for us not to be greedy and ask for too much from the finance department. But in the past, I've asked for some of the things you were just alluding to. Only stores that were in existence for, the equivalent of same store.
Mhm.
And it would give you the range for a retail, the range of, at this end, this many were down, this many were flat, this many were up. But there's a lot of things that they can do, I'm agreeing with you.
Right.
A lot of things they can do as long as we don't ask for monthly or regularly. Some of those things we should only ask for annually or a snapshot of. But you're right, it's all there, and they've designed the reports that work the best for them and for council for a big picture.
Mhm.
All we have to do is think of what we want and ask politely and be friendly and smile when we ask. And
Say
don't
please.
ask too often. So there's just a lot, and it's great that you've already started getting that breakdown. The reason we never had it before is because we never asked for it. But it sounds like you're not ready to do this now. I'm curious as to whether we want to wait and see how it goes with Visit Goldman and make other decisions in the future.
That's definitely a possibility.
And I think, but before you spent more time to whittle down what was asked, going back to what are the goals, like what kind of goals do we want to achieve for this data, number one, but then, back up one more step to see what actually Visit Golden does. Because I do think you can, between that report and what we get from the sales tax reports, we'll find the data and the trends we need to make decisions on. So I don't think it's worth the money to spend.
Okay, so I need a motion for the direction,
No, you don't need a motion.
If we-
Just
if
for
we're
the
not gonna do
direction that
anything.
we're
Not to
not
do
going
it.
to do? We're
We're not
just,
gonna do
okay,
anything.
we're not doing
It's-
anything.
It's kind of on hold, may come up someday in the future,
Okay,
might not.
good discussion. Okay, next, the legacy fund proposal from GURA.
So as we noted in the memo, the last time we updated an agreement with GURA for the legacy fund, which was, as you know, the money left over from the GURA downtown project that ended in 2014, was up to about $2 million at one time. We actually extended the life of the agreement, but indicated that any monies that were unencumbered or unspent as of December 31 of this year would be transferred from GURA to the DDA. At that time, we had no idea that we were going to lend out a chunk of that money for COVID loans and would not see some of it back until 23 and 24, and now it turns out a little bit of it will come back in 25. And so, and the GURA board was actually pretty open to whatever you guys want. They think it would be cool to commit the money to a final capital project, specifically the Parker Park restroom / somewhat transit center. That is, it's not in the design, but it shows up in the capital improvement program for next year. But in the end, if we end up not doing anything, what the DDA will receive is about $75,000 at the end of this year, which is the unencumbered and unspent that's on hand. And then at the end of '23, about 50, and the end of '24, about 50, and $59.25. A little bit in '25. What happened was,
I'm
it's
gonna
more than
raise
that.
25.
One of the borrowers asked to defer the start date of their payments by a few months, and so that's why that one trickles over. They were all 4-year loans. So I think the ask of you is, should we do a project, commit to a project, knowing that some of the money will be trickling in? Should we just let the agreement die? And if we do a project, do you like Hartford Park bathrooms? Oh, final thing is, you probably have a moral commitment, but not a legal commitment to use it for the purposes that we agreed upon in the IGAs, which are more capital type things. Not to put it into the grant program, for example,
Right.
or power washing. But that's just a matter of budget.
So, working at the visitor center and not allowing our visitors to come in and use the restroom and sending them across the street to the park, I would certainly be in favor of taking that $75,000, giving it to the city to be a capital, part of a capital project for those bathrooms over there. We get people from all over the world come into the visitor center, and I feel so bad having to say the bathrooms are across the street.
And yes, those of you who are asking, the city project is gonna happen anyhow. So at least 3 of you were gonna ask that question sometime during this conversation.
The what, where are they happening?
The project's gonna happen anyhow.
Oh, okay, but it's like 900,000.
Well, I don't think it'll be that much, but that's the number they put in before they start design.
So this gets me to my comment about when Sarah mentioned how much her taxes are going to the DDA. And I feel like we need to be good stewards of that kind of money from the people that contribute to that. And so where does the line delineated from city money to DDA specific projects as opposed to commingling the money? I've always had this issue, to be honest with you. Sometimes I thought we were doing things that the city should be doing, like fixing sidewalks. That's just a general statement. So for this project, I agree that it should be earmarked for the purpose of capital projects. Because, and to give everybody who wasn't on this board back when the Gura Legacy Fund was here, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, it was like 3 years ago, the inner agreement between the DDA and Gura to have a team to figure out how we're gonna spend all this money, it was like to the tune of, $2 million or something dollars. It was, the end date was like 3 years ago, or 2 years ago. And we extended it. I just want to tell them we extended it. So it ended, it was all the money was going to come to the DDA. And the Gura board came and said, you know what, we haven't spent any of it. We don't feel it's right. And the DDA at the time, the board could have just said, no, it's going to the DDA. We're going to make the decision. But we did what I call is right. And we said, yeah, we're going to extend the agreement so the DDA board and the Gura board can collectively make these decisions, of which we have, Astor House, et cetera. Now we're down to 75,000. So to me, to commit.
It's 180 if you count the whole 3 years worth. 23, 22, 23, 24.
So I was gonna do the 2242 plus 75, it's like 312, right?
There's 107 left to be repaid is what the memo says.
You've already received some of the payments back.
311. So is there 242 in loans expended? Okay.
No,
Yeah,
most
that's-
of that's already come back.
Yeah, so how much is the final number?
Well, it's in the memo, it's 107,000.
Okay, 107,000. Okay, so it's 107,000 that's coming there. So we got 75 plus
It's about 180,000.
180,000. Right, so we got 180,000 to spend, but we're not gonna get that all right away because we're gonna, in the form of loans. So we got 180,000. But for me, to have 75,000 just earmarked to a project, I mean, if we were just all talking here, said, hey, let's spend 75,000 on public bathrooms, whoa, where's that coming from? The only reason it's being suggested is because it's running out at the end of the year. And I think it's not a wise decision just to spend it because Gura is gonna lose control of it, so they can say, we had it. I don't agree with that. We wouldn't be talking about this project unless it expired. So to me, it should roll into the DDA, and then we'll fund it, we'll fund a project that's good, and maybe 180 goes to it. I still have an issue with funding a project that I think the the city should be involved with the bathrooms. Now, that being said, what you said, Karen, maybe another bathroom needs to be constructed by the visitor center. And if you were to say, we're gonna spend $200,000 on helping the visitor center create a new bathroom, kind of where the bike library was, or something like that, that maybe could be an interesting topic to discuss.
One pushback to that is downtown bathrooms have been on the legacy fund list the entire time. But that's why I mentioned that it's gonna happen anyhow, so that if you want to, and, no, we've never had any funding for prospectors out. This is
Well,
not a big deal.
No, I know,
All you
I'm just
guys
saying.
have to do is decide, do you want to have the money trickle into the DDA and make capital decisions? Or do you want to earmark all 3 years to a big project, it's a cool project, and it's hard to argue that it wasn't gonna happen anyhow. But we will always be mixing money, so a better example is 11th and Washington ADA improvements would not have happened if DDA didn't push them. This is different, it's already gonna be in the budget, and there's gonna be some money put to it, but this is not intended to be a big deal. This is, do you like committing together all the money to a joint project, or do you want to have the responsibility to do it yourselves?
Can I ask a, oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, but, we could just commit the 75,000 to the project, and the rest of the money would go into our funds after the
Over
first
time.
of the year, over time.
Well, no, we wouldn't get any more until the beginning of '24,
Right,
because we wouldn't collect it
right,
until throughout
right,
next year.
right.
But yeah, you could contribute some of it. The other lesson we had is that it became awkward and difficult and almost like a conference committee between the House and the Senate, because both boards had to approve it.
Mhm.
So
At the same time.
I would encourage you to either commit all of it or none of it, and just go with, when I'm not putting words in your mouth.
It's okay.
That a better way to go would be to have the money matriculate over to DDA, and you'll make smart decisions over time with it.
Okay.
Based on what it was designed for, capital
Capital
project.
stuff.
And Heather, you had a comment.
Just so once GURA, this is just a overall question that I'm not familiar with. So GURA ends, will they for sure end?
GURA never ends,
GURA never ends.
No.
unless the city terminates it. They have 3 active projects.
It's just the
in other parts
legacy
of town.
fund of these
The
funds.
downtown project, each project area ends after 25 years.
Okay,
So from 1989 to 2014. So after 2014, they were out of business in the downtown area.
okay.
But, and it was almost exclusively sales tax is what the legacy fund was made out of, because the property tax income they collected was committed to their debt service.
And that's when the DDA came about.
Okay,
14, I can't believe it's been that many years.
all right, thank you.
What I remember when Brewer came, because the money was going to go completely to DDA after, I think, 5 years.
Which would have been 19, which is what Dean's remembering.
And they walked in and said, well, DDA, you've had this money for 5 years and you haven't done anything with it, so we want to still be involved.
Well,
The other
they,
side of the coin
no, it was a
they hadn't
group,
done
they were
anything
with it
either.
still.
Okay,
So they still
It was a
had.
group,
No.
it was the two of you.
It was
Yeah,
the two,
they-
they didn't do anything with it either, we had to
They hadn't
collect
done
it.
anything either, and it was kind of, we still want to have a hold of it, because you, DDA, haven't done anything, well, what have you done with it? You
Well,
run, so,
I would think we would disagree with that
yeah. Anyway, we extended it,
description.
I'm kind of I'm agreeing with you, let's just,
Have them put it in our
yeah.
fund
yeah.
for a future,
Rather than committing, right now, just because we want to get it in on before December 31st.
okay. While we're discussing bathrooms, what about the ones over by the Astor House? Are they in good shape right now?
well, they're in the capital.
Great question.
They're-
They're in the capital
They're in the
program, and
capital.
there are issues with that whole property over there, but they're actually budgeted for this year.
And I understand that the ones down by the ball fields, people have pulled the sinks off the wall and,
Well, those are budgeted also, There's money budgeted for 22,
Oh, those are
23,
not the
and
DDA.
24.
You know that?
Yeah.
Yes, you live there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
and the tubing companies will tell you, permanent restrooms are desperately needed in Hanover Park,
Yes.
because their toilets
just be in the
are
river.
overrun.
That kind of, gets involved with Hardy Bolt. Okay.
Yes.
So it sounds like,
Okay.
it sounds like since no action is necessary for the agreement to terminate under its regular time period, but that means that we will be showing additional projected revenue under miscellaneous revenue for next year.
Okay. All right. That brings us to the initial 2023 budget discussion. Always fun.
So, by statute, we need to have a budget by the end of the year. Our last scheduled meeting is November. And then we have to transmit that budget to the Department of Local Affairs. City Council actually has to impose the mill levy at their December meeting for that portion of our budget. And the tradition has been to have an official public hearing. And one of the ironies of civic life is that the operating and capital budgets are about the most important things that are done of the city manager's responsibilities each year. And generally, no one in the community pays any attention to the budget. And if you add up all the city's funds, it is tens of millions of dollars between water, wastewater, drainage, capital fund, general fund, et cetera. So the reason that we brought it to today is we think there's some policy things to start thinking about, but also the primary data point that we get is we get a letter at the end of August from the county assessor that tells us what they believe the increment value will be in our taxing district and what the assessed value will be for the 5 property tax in our district. So we have the data as of a few weeks ago and thought it would be worthwhile to chat with you briefly. I had hoped to have a conversation with City Council that I'm now having next week before this meeting about their desire to have a more consolidated way to support community entities that create thriving community. And it is not just arts and culture. There's, over the conversation about lodging taxes, a whole lot of other types of entities that could be eligible for what I am calling the Thriving Community Support Program. And in my last conversation with council a few weeks ago, we talked about targeting some of the lodging tax for some major capital projects and also for some smaller capital projects. The council is interested in this idea of whether it's grants or other programs, how do we help those elements in the community that really make Golden what it is? And so one of the implications of that is the second one I've listed. So on page 3 of the memo, there's a few things we think we should think about. One is what came to light earlier this evening is the need for us to look at our grant program in total. And so if you look at the spreadsheet we proposed, we put in a number for total for grants, and it's just for discussion, but didn't divide it up into the way we normally have. We've created little buckets for website grants and facade grants and arts and culture grants and special event grants and the whole community partnering stuff. So I'm hoping you all agree that it's fairly urgent for us to figure out what we want to do with our grant programs soon. And possibly not be handing out grants at the beginning of next year, to force ourselves to just do it, just get it done. And so one change would be, do we just put a lump sum number in for grants, which if you flip to the spreadsheet,
The first one.
and you might miss it. So yeah, we put different separators in. Top of the second page, line 68. line 68 used to just be the header for all the grants, but for discussion purposes, we put 100,000 in 23 and 24, and you'll notice projected in 22, including the community partner in the 77. But the thought being, we can have a budget that puts a bunch of money, a certain amount into grants, and we can figure out ASAP what to do with it.
It's fine with DOLA, it's not like DOLA has to have the sub
Yeah,
buckets.
they wouldn't care. The other one, though, is, will you want to be giving arts and culture and special events grants in addition to a much more robust program on the city side whose intention was to consolidate that in one place? Meaning, if I had my city hat on, it would be encouraging the DDA not to do that, not to keep giving out arts and culture grants and having this dichotomy between the two, and have the more robust, and I'm recommending about double of what the city and DDA together have been doing for grants for when I talk to council next week. And you're not making decisions until the November meeting, but would that take us out of the community partnering business and the arts and culture and special events business? The downside of that is you would not have control over those grants. Those grant seekers would be subject to going through the city process.
But it would also be city money, it wouldn't be
Right, it wouldn't be your
DDA,
money.
it wouldn't be DDA money.
The other one is, of your community partners, the one that most urgently needs your annual support each year is the visitor center.
Absolutely.
You can argue that the other two have robust budgets and could deal without the community support we've been doing. So, do we say, sorry, visitor center, go talk to the city? Or do you give them one more year just to make sure of continuity and see how the city program goes? And then the fourth one is, what capital projects would we envision for the next couple of years? And realizing that capital projects, when we talk about them, is both the line item of capital for when, like, we buy fencing enclosures or things, but also the line item, it's called contribution to city capital, when we pay the city to build something that they're going to own. The most recent example is the money that you authorized last month, where the project is nearly complete already. Those planters are owned by the city, and so that, for accounting purposes, that's called contribution to city capital. That's not called DDA capital. DDA capital is for things that DDA owns. So with that, our property taxes revenues will go down. Our assessed value went down with the reassessment this year, and a large part of it is a major employer's personal property that is being moved out of their building and or depreciated. But the increment should go up. I'm reluctant to estimate sales tax increment as high as I think it's going to be. I'm just kind of fearful of getting that aggressive. And so if we wanted to, we could take a minute and go through the draft, which is the one that, it's the first one in there, and it ends with 23 budget and 24 budget, as opposed to the tracker, which ends with 22 year to date. So making sure you're on the right one. On the tracker, you'll notice that the sales tax increment for the first half of the year, we're at 194. But don't go to it, trust me, it says 194 for the first half of the year. I'm fearful of suggesting that our year end would be double that, and in fact, the second half of the year is always higher than the first half of the year. So we'll know more. We know one more month after the first half of the year, which was strong. July was strong. So those were July sales, August collections. I don't know how prudent it is to up that estimate as high as it could actually go, because if it comes in low, then we have to be careful about our expenditures. One accounting rule of law is you don't appropriate revenues, you appropriate expenditures. You estimate revenues. since we have reserves, if our revenues came in slightly short, we wouldn't have to reduce our expenditures. But it seems prudent to be cautious. We're a little bit cautious in being more conservative with revenues and more conservative the other way with expenditures. Estimate expenditures a little bit high and revenues a little bit low, so as not to get you in trouble. But revenues from property tax, we know exactly what they'll be next year from the letters that we got from the assessor. In '24, they should be a little bit higher because '23 is a reassessment. But the revenues are I feel really good about the revenues for projected '22, budget '23, budget '24, with the exception, and '24 is the last year of sales tax until we renegotiate with the city. One reason that we would want to renegotiate with the city is our property tax revenues will remain flat until the Coors Tech redevelopment really gets going and buildings have been complete for a couple of years, because it takes that long to get on the tax rolls. So we will be in flat property taxes till at the least 2028, which is, I was thinking, well, that's another reason to ask council to extend a version of the sales tax for a few more years so we can continue to do great things.
Just so there could be a discussion about changing things.
Most of the rest of these are pretty consistent with a slight proposed increase in holiday lights, especially if we do the north half of the parking lot that city's repaving over between 12th and 13th. And we didn't do the north half last year because there's no electricity to it. So we could talk for a few minutes about this, or we could just have you think about it and think about both grants and do you want to still be in the arts and culture and community partnering business going forward, and then have another discussion next month and then a public hearing in November.
Can I ask a question about events? You were lumping events in with, arts and culture a little bit. Is the thinking that the city would be doing event funding possibly too, along with all that other stuff?
Well, the city manager's office has an events grant program now.
Okay.
Not that they'd be lumped together. And part of the difficulty with 2023 is council wants to take a more strategic look at arts and culture, and that may include special events or not.
Okay.
So in terms of and this is all premature because council hasn't seen it. The current process for the city grants is the special events committee
Special Events Review Committee.
Special Events Review Committee also does reviews any special event grants submitted to the city.
So okay, it's going to, it had been managed by the city manager's office, but the committee is going to take on that responsibility.
I thought Alex said he was already going to do that. Maybe he doesn't have any current ones.
Probably.
The Citizens Budget Advisory Committee advises the city manager's office on the citizen benefit type grants to some of our partner agencies that like Family Tree and other ones like that.
Okay.
And then in the future, if there's an Arts and Commission Council, they would be advising on arts and culture type grants.
Which may or may not include events, depending on.
At the time, because there may be some internal reshuffling of internal city stuff after that.
So what's been available in the past for like Foothills Arts Center or Myers Eye Class in terms of city grants? I wasn't even aware that was available.
No, they don't have them.
No, those
DDA
were
has been.
Well, no, I know that, but you
those
said,
have been outside. The
But-
city ones have been for things that don't fall within our boundaries or our programs.
but now there will be money available from the state potentially for like Myers Eye Playhouse and Foothills Arts Center, et cetera? I mean,
Starting with
from the city?
Starting with putting together the ballot measure for the lodging tax.
Okay,
There
got it.
was discussion that some of the things that would be appropriate could include arts and culture.
Okay, got
So
it.
that is the conversation that ideally I would have had with council last week and it's now next week.
No, I understand. And so there's a new source of money, and now that's a new source of possible funding for the arts, culturals, or whatever. And then you got the marijuana tax too. That's probably something on top of that when that gets all worked
Well,
out,
except
right?
for that's been earmarked so far for public health, which could include food insecurity, housing insecurity, health programs,
Mental health,
paramedicine,
substance abuse.
Oh, okay.
those types of things.
Gotcha.
So most of what we would call thriving community is
Lodging.
lodging tax.
Okay. Thanks.
But I guess the discussion you had a moment ago about what the city pays for the DDA pays.
Yeah.
So were we as a group wanting to funnel more money into either downtown businesses and or downtown property owners, both residential and commercial, then it would be a benefit to not also be doing arts and culture if we wanted to spread that money further.
Yeah, my thought would be to remove those buckets, at least in their formal naming of arts and culture and events, and try to open up the grants program a little more broadly, maybe defined more by our mission and by providing examples of projects we have funded, but leave it more on a case-by-case basis. And if somebody comes with an arts and culture and event need, they can explain why the other buckets, the other groups weren't adequate, and that can be up to our discretion. But I agree. I think we should get off of making that a formal bucket in title.
Right, you could always have an other category in grants.
Could you have an other bucket for grants like that? Maybe there's special grants that wouldn't be funded otherwise, maybe bigger impact grants versus, yeah, just kind of I mean, it would have boundary, you know, there would be stipulations, but sometimes there's unforeseen expenses or opportunities that a nonprofit would have that fall in the DDA, and maybe you have kind of reserve grants, and I don't know if that's.
I'm not sure if I did it on purpose, but our contingency is shown as being doubled for the next 2 years.
Okay.
And please look at the bottom line. We are not dipping into, if these numbers are accurate, which I believe they are, we are not significantly dipping into our reserves.
So you could receive these special requests at, like, whether
Well, we can
it's.
do whatever our program guidelines allow for so that we aren't making it up as we go along.
And so something in the grants committee had talked about, and we also talked about at the meeting, there could be like 2 rounds, right? We talked about getting advertising more. Here are things that have been funded in the past, you know, stoking ideas among businesses and groups, seeing what comes in, and then look at spending priorities and, you know, investment priorities and seeing what is. And you guys have talked about potentially then keeping reserve for in grants for something that comes up outside, and having that better communications about here's what's been funded in the past, here's a deadline, like twice a year. That could lead to some really good, like, people like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. Maybe I should put it in an application. And then the committee could begin to look at everything together and have a fuller experience. You know, that's not the great word, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
For good ideas that might not fall into sort of narrow category.
And it seems like it might be also worth just taking another look at our action plan and strategic plans, and there's elements in there that it just doesn't seem we've done tons around, right?
That would be that
Like
plan is
landscaping
sort
and
of
transportation.
could use a good look.
Yeah.
Sequence, possibly after. It could be a bigger task, but it's really something we should do. We should do that. If we look at big things coming to us, Rob and I have already been approached by the COSTEX folks wanting to talk in general about what might happen in the future. And we're reluctant to recommend anything too early to you for projects that start in a couple of years and don't come on the tax roll for a few years later. That it will really affect us in the 2030s. That redevelopment will affect us in terms of opportunities and potential resources. So, you know, 23 could be the year that we really buckle down and tackle our grant programs and our business support programs and look at the action plan and find other round of capital projects that are affordable ones out there. If they're not affordable, then we're partnering with the city, but it's something we've proposed to them, not something that they're just looking for us to help with something that's gonna happen anyway.
And don't feel bad about the action plan. I was just in Loveland and they applied like 20 years ago between the first plan of development and the update. So we're like well within reason.
We're still doing good.
Yeah,
Well,
we're
you
still
know,
good.
but on that thought too, like the core stack, right? One thing that keeps ringing through my mind is they're obligated to create a transportation plan management program. But at the same time, wouldn't it be cooler? And I don't know the details of how these things work, but wouldn't it be cooler if there was something broader than just the core stack? There is.
In the works.
And
And
does
So
DDA play a role in
We'll never get
coordinating
away
it?
from the issue of, should we partner with the city on this, or should we, and the benefit of partnering is more leverage, or maybe control a little bit. But we'll never get away from that. It will happen all the time, because that's part of the action plan for the Community and Economic Development Department, along with the comprehensive parking study, is TDM. Transportation Demand Management type of a district. And there's stuff that Robin and Rick Murray are working on already.
So some of you know we're doing, did you send it to your employees? I sent an email out last week about, there's a downtown transit option survey going on. We did one right before COVID thinking, oh, maybe we'll create like an RTD district, and then to COVID. So that, we released that survey last week to the city. Mine sent it out. I sent it to all the downtown employers asking you to share it with your employees. The chamber sent it out, or was going to send it out today. Within like 6 days, we have more than 400 responses. Last time we had 510 after 3 weeks. We have 400 in like 6 days. And
great.
so it's getting some good information about travel, transit and travel behaviors, desires, all of that will go into what you just described.
Hey, Steve, the core stack, it would, in terms of the order of magnitude though, so wouldn't it be more of a TIF arrangement with them probably?
We're not so sure. We're not so sure that whether there's things that they're doing that we should contribute to, as opposed to using the increment for things that benefit the downtown area that wouldn't get done otherwise. And we'll be back in the middle of, like, for example, there are some transportation impact provisions in their zoning that have them putting in a proportionate amount, which could be partnering 3 ways between the project, the city, and the DDA. We want to bring you a policy paper by the end of winter. It talks about order of magnitude, what could be involved, and there could be some on-site stuff for some public plazas or something, but it's not like an urban renewal deal where the classic but for some public participation in the project wouldn't happen. We think it's more of addressing impacts from the project, such as to 10th Avenue, to Parfit Park, to Vanover Park, Washington Avenue, 4th Street, or really above and beyond enhancements. It is a big project, but it's their job to build a nice big project. So it'll be really exciting, and the fruition of it will be, as we say, years from now. But to start thinking about it, I think it's timely.
Steve, wouldn't Coors Tech and the people doing this 12-acre project, wouldn't they benefit from working with RTD to have the Gold Line come into Goosetown?
But yeah, that's not gonna happen.
Ever?
Not in anyone here's lifetime.
Not a train, not a train.
That'd be great.
I know, it just seems like it's such a waste. I mean, the track is there, and
Well, as an employer, they would do everything they could to get even a bus line out from the Ward Road Station to McIntyre Street, which are things we're working on. But
But
you
not
should not
ever the-
anticipate commuter rail.
that's so sad.
All of the Coors Tech stuff, is there any oversight on there? It's all private property, right? I'm just learning about this, so.
Well,
forgive my
there's
ignorance.
lots of oversight as to what they build. And there's zoning that, and how high it can be and where it can be and what it'll look like, lots of review, entitlement it's called.
Okay.
The uses are listed, the uses are probably broader than, uses are generally pretty broad in zoning. They are obligated to build certain public infrastructure and to contribute to certain public infrastructure. They're obligated to either provide or contribute to workforce housing a certain amount. What we are going to be looking at as a team is comparing what they're obligated to do and contribute to for adjacent and nearby infrastructure with what we think the impacts could be, and what we think the cost could be by the time you get to 2029 or 2030. Without getting ahead of ourselves, I think we as your staff think that the most highest priority will be making sure that there's funding for infrastructure that's made necessary by the project, that's above and beyond what they're obligated to build. By law, and there's lots and lots of court law, and we can bore you to death with the 5th and the 14th Amendments and due process, and rough proportionality and rational nexus. But there has to be a nexus between the impacts that a property development causes and what we make them build, and how much of what we make them pay for of what they build. So if you're next to a big street and you're the traffic that makes it need to be improved, but you're only 20% of the total traffic, by law, it's hard for us to make you pay for more than 20% of the improvement.
Sure.
No, there's wiggle room in there. But, yeah, there's going to be a good amount of oversight, and they'll probably be starting in their entitlement process in 23. And I think they want to start building the first building by the beginning of 24.
Thank you.
So I think for the end of this, any questions or comments today, just have you think about these questions, and it will be slightly different when you see it in October. And we'll know more about what the city's doing. You'll know more about the magnitude of what might be provided to some of our nonprofits and some of the structure of that by then.
Evan, what day is our 2024 or our October meeting?
The third Monday. It's always the third Monday, except in January and February, which is not this month. So whatever the third
So,
Monday of
thank you, ma'am.
October is, it is the 17th.
Or 17th, yes.
John,
Okay.
any comments?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner comments and updates. Let's start with Heather.
I have none.
None?
None?
Me? Oh.
Yep, you're next.
I have no specific comments right now. I do have a question.
I was gonna say, if you have any questions,
Yeah.
you can do that here too.
Have we skipped over, or have we gone down to the downtown services?
No, that's next thing. That's
Oh, that's next.
under staff report.
Nothing on current.
Okay. JJ. Casey.
I saw the work all being done on the trash cans and moving the lights and everything, and that's really exciting. The trash cans look great. One thing that I've noticed over time, the intersection of 14th and Washington at night is pretty darn dark these days. And it's got a nice, lovely crosswalk. In the day, it's getting lots of good use, that crosswalk. But that crosswalk at night is pretty darn dim, especially if you're coming down the hill. You've got the brighter lights further down. You don't often see the pedestrians crossing at that.
Especially on the Avenue Vision side.
Yes.
Are there any of the taller streetlights or just one? 01, there's not two. Every other intersection has 2 streetlights of the taller ones at each intersection, which is the justification for being able to get rid of the planter ones, which didn't really do anything at 13th and 12th and 11th.
Right.
We should look.
Could you look, yeah, because if there's and maybe that needs to
We'll
go
drive
back,
by.
maybe that needs to go back on the city's list of replacement Excel lights or
Right.
something, or,
Don't forget to drive by in 10 to look at the lights.
Oh, gosh, I
ABCD.
still need to do that one, yeah, right,
I like C.
yeah. Now, do you want to talk about, Mayor Sally and the council discussion we had?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, I have no comment. You want, you'd be better to brief, I think.
Well, as you probably know, we had a long discussion on council, initially about outdoor seating in the Miners Alley, but it also ranged over to include the topic of, moving forward, was there council interest in shutting down, vehicular access in Miners Alley? Regardless of whether there was seating in Miners Alley, was there interest in having some sort of movable bollards or something movable so you could still do deliveries, but in other times of the day, it would still be close to vehicular traffic. And generally, there was council interest in considering such a thing. And I think what we discussed is that it might be best if DDA could kind of lead or consider that discussion. What would it entail? What would be the thought process to evaluate that? How would the proposal work? Timeframes? Would there need to be capital improvements of some sort to create that, movable bollard or structure or something that could?
Should have been there and pushed back on that.
Okay, I'll stop saying bollard.
No,
Yeah.
the DDA part.
Oh, the DDA part.
Yeah, I was
So-
hoping that was that other guy.
The other
Assignment.
guy is starting that project.
Oh, okay,
The
all
other
right.
guy started that.
Oh, the other guy is
already.
starting that project?
Yeah,
Okay.
which means the planning, community and economic development director from the planning side is starting
Okay.
the project.
So
But was there a discussion is from that guy on whether there might need to be infrastructure elements as part of that discussion?
DDA should be involved.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have planners run planning public input processes and arm waving meetings.
Yeah.
Which is being started.
Okay.
And that's, yeah,
So I was
they've already started.
actually- I was thinking, I better find out what happened at that meeting before tonight, so I would know.
Well, that's great to hear it's already started. So yeah, then I guess.
I mean, internal discussions have already started.
Yeah, so then at some point we'll get to hear back what
Yes.
the DDA role and the interaction with TDA
Yeah.
will be as part of
Yes,
that.
the
This is-
community.
The DDA role should be in providing policy direction, because not every voice, we'll never get every voice when we try to in
Yeah.
the downtown area, but providing some policy direction. Lots of advice, there's way cool bollards, the ones that pop straight up, the ones
Yeah.
that fold up,
Yeah, cool.
things that don't get.
Splash pad.
Where would you sound?
I think specifically we were just referring to the Miners Alley between 11th and 12th.
To start.
And that our understanding was that other businesses on the other blocks have generally not been as intrigued by doing, closing the alley for dining. And there's parking behind Dells and other things. And there were some other limitations that other businesses were not so interested, is
That
my
is true.
understanding.
That is true.
So I think the main focus on Miners Alley between 11th and 12th. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you have, aren't they gonna have, living areas above that one?
Yes, they do, there is.
Or they don't have any parking in the alley anyway.
They do on the other side of, still in apartments. The other side of 12.
Right, well, in the parking lot.
But no, I mean, there's some parking back behind the, right next to the building.
Right, those are
But on
owned by
the
that
other
building
side,
owner.
other side
and-
of 12, but nothing,
But those aren't for any residential units, those are for the commercial tenants in that building.
oh, I always thought that's
So
where.
all the
residents-
residential above the west side of Washington Avenue parks, if they have autos, they purchase, residential permits and they park in the garages or the surface lots.
I thought those few spots in between, well, south of 12th Street, I thought, right next to the building, I thought those were some of those apartments. Okay.
I'm pretty sure the
Anything like
second
that on
floor
the
of
other
all
side?
those buildings is commercial.
On the 11th, between 11th and 12th, there's nothing like that. So the only other traffic that you have in that alley right now would be delivery
In short
in
runs.
track.
No, there's no, right now there's no it's in Miners Alley right now. It's, I mean, for 2.5 years it hasn't been an issue because the deliveries essentially are all businesses related to me. I mean, deliveries have been no problem, the way we had it segmented out. Casey, thanks for bringing that up because I do want to just mention one thing based on that because I wasn't even thinking about it. The main reason to do this, there's one reason. I mean, well, to make it look nice, and that's another topic for discussion. But it's safety. Before, in the day, it was Meyer Appliance Center, and they used to back up. I mean, it used to be like a driveway type slope. it was necessary. Now, it's customer-facing businesses. There's thousands of people that walk in that alley to go into the businesses every week. That's the main reason, and Amy and I are horrified about how badly or someone could get hurt or killed, because people don't care about the one ways. They go both ways, and we witness it every day. And one opener was, we had to close down for about a week because Comcast needed to do some construction, so we opened it after 2.5 years for 5 days, and we're horrified by seeing, and that was kind of a good thing before it got shut down, because it was all of a sudden, whoa, the cars go by there pretty quickly. Now, is there a lot of cars? No. There's really not a lot of traffic in that alley. Deliveries are fine. They stop at the ends of the alley. It's mainly where the customer-facing restaurant traffic is, and it's very, I'm gonna use the word urgent, that we get something done there, because I'm horrified about somebody walking out of there, even during the day. Because you walk out, and the property line is literally on the street. So just to kind of reiterate that, but thanks for bringing that up, Casey.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, I have a few things. Between 12th and 13th, we still don't have permission to string lights?
Correct.
Okay. Is it ever
In
gonna
the
happen? In the alley, I know.
The plan is, so I was right and wrong in the memo paragraph when we get there, that it actually did start last week between 11th and 12th.
Mhm.
The concrete was saw cut in areas that all the property owners agreed to as to where the poles will be. And, the total investment will likely be more if we do both lots.
Okay.
And we did not get the full grant of 50,000 from the state, we only got 38,000 because of our delays. But the thought
We
had
could
been.
ask for the remaining 12, see what they say.
The thought had been to do the first one and then talk to that other block. One of the issues had been who should design connections to buildings. There was a desire not to have as many poles in that other block. But right now, the project that has started last week is just for the block from 11th to 12th.
Okay. So the trash enclosures, is this the final way where they've taken out the can and they've filled it with rock?
No, there will be sandstone.
That's temporary then?
It's temporary until
Okay.
the sandstone arrives.
Okay, thank you.
Not enclosures, the trash lids or something.
The planters.
The planter.
Right,
So,
yeah.
does everyone know for the 10 that have been completed up to the north side of 13th, the old cans have been removed to get rid of them. Gravel was inserted, and sandstone has been ordered exactly the right size. It'll look way better than the rest of the tops look, to one piece to fill that hole.
Is it gonna be filled
Flush.
in the, flush, okay.
With
That I
rock.
wondered about.
And
Okay.
fixing some of the other ground.
And then there's a new dining enclosure in Miners Alley, and is that, it's like a little tent kind of thing, a structure?
Not
Oh.
in the alley.
The pergola? Pergola, maybe?
It's not in the alley itself.
Oh, but that's
It's
been up for more
recessed.
than a
Is
year.
that, oh, it's been up for more
It's
than
been
a
up
year?
Oh, yeah.
for,
And then
Did you
behind
do
it is a
2020
bunch.
or?
yeah, it's been up like maybe almost 2 years now.
Yeah, that's on
COVID.
his property.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's- we
on your
put-
property.
Yeah,
And then behind that, I didn't walk back there, but there's lights.
there's lights back there.
That's more dining? Okay. And
We
it's,
cut a hole in the old Capitol building. You walk
Mhm.
in, the room on the outside, we structurally got all that done. We took the old brick out and created a big double door to walk out there. And so we have seating out there now. We really haven't done anything with it yet. I mean, not really. We haven't started seating people out there much. It's kind of just dragging their feet. We should need to get busy on it, but it's gonna be an outdoor patio.
right, okay, yeah, makes sense. I mean, it's gonna look really, really good. And then between 12th and 13th, behind Dell's, they're no longer allowed to use that as parking? Is that right?
That parking is,
Gone?
the property owner allows his tenants to use it by agreement with him.
Okay. And then are those gonna be planters?
I don't know.
Okay.
I was sitting on them the other day with the property owner and meant to ask him that question. But that, by way of surprising, that's where the property line is. It's that far into what we thought was the alley.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. Anybody else have any updates or questions? Or-
John, anything?
Oh, sorry, John. I forget
Oh,
about.
that's all right. Nothing really, just over here feeling philosophical, I guess. Just a comment on, our focus area of business vitality. Man, it's an interesting time, where all our metrics are based on sales tax and volume of tourists and that kind of thing, but if you look a little bit deeper, there's a lot of places, a lot of restaurants going out of business or changing hands because of the state of the labor market and supply chain and how difficult it is to be in business right now. I just wanted to take a moment to recalibrate our metrics a little bit, from Starbucks and Sassafras and Barrels and Bottles and Colorado Plus, and the list goes on. It's an ever-changing landscape despite the numbers looking so good. So I just wanted to make sure, especially the non-business owners on the board, are kind of seeing that reality there.
Thank you.
Along those lines, minimum wage is gonna go up 8.9%, and tip wages are going up over 11%, January 1. And I think that just got announced today. So just put that into context, okay? Kind of a follow-up to what you just said, Jonathan, because it really impacts restaurants big time. I mean, 11% for the majority of the servers and bartenders, it goes up 11%. And regular minimum wage goes up 8.8%, I think I just said. So it's substantial. And I'm just gonna tell you guys, my servers make over $40 an hour. So there's a misconception that people who serve don't make a affordable wage because they make this minimum wage, but tips are that good. And I just did an analysis today on Old Capital today, and so I know exactly what it is. $40 an hour. So what's happening, just to put it in context, you get this divergence from front of house employers, bartenders, servers, et cetera, from back of house, cooks, et cetera, servers. And you can't pay your cooks $40 an hour because no restaurant will ever no one could ever survive at that number. Now you can pay your chefs and stuff like that, your executive chefs, but it's really, to your point, Jonathan, it's a really tough time, an interesting time of what's gonna happen in the whole industry. Because it's gonna be tough for people to pay $20 for a hamburger. So just kind of a little education there, kind of in follow-up to what you just said, Jonathan.
And to what you're just saying, with tourists coming in, are they going to be looking for less expensive meals, or are they gonna be hitting the high-end restaurants?
That's a great question. People might have to change the way they do malls. I mean, this fast casual is kind of more of a trend, meaning you go up to the bar and order your food. You don't have a server, or stuff like that. More use of technology. That's why you're seeing, like years ago, McDonald's went away, you just order on a kiosk. That could happen. There's capital expense to employ that kind of technology, but that's a great question, which I think that it's unknown right now. But I think you're definitely, so what the effect of the minimum wage in 2017, Amendment 770, January 1st of 2017, they raised minimum wage 99 cents and then 90 cents and 9 cents and 9 cents to get to $12. And every year after that, it is based on the CPI of Colorado. But with inflation so high, they just announced what's going to be January 1st. Like I think it was today or yesterday. So it's tied to the consumer price index. So when you have an inflationary environment, it's really tough. If it's 2% a year, that's kind of normal. But so it's going to be interesting to see the climate Even, it's just not just restaurants, it's retail business, it's everybody who has to employ people, but restaurants in particular, because it's a kind of low margin business, it's pretty tough. And, yeah, he just mentioned, 4 places closing down.
Or,
Or,
At least 2 of those places don't have anything to do with them not being profitable.
okay.
Two of them are doing okay, but they're moving their focus to other places. But it is.
And there's a new
something-
place going into Colorado Plus. There's gonna be a wings place, and Abby said that in Currents of Barrels of Bottles, she wants to focus on her other location, and that was not an issue for downtown. So,
What was
I
that
don't,
issue?
I don't think anyone's gonna say, hey, we're losing our ass, so we're going out of business. I think everyone's gonna have a nice story. But the point is just how flawed I think our metrics are, especially going into a would-be recession. We might just want to start thinking outside of the box and how we support businesses. Again, just thinking philosophically here, I just think there's kind of a weird attitude, or what's the word? There's a weird environment right now that kind of goes underrepresented based on sales and guest count.
I agree. It's been strange. Staff report.
I'll handle the first and third items. In terms of the tracker, there's not much news. If you flip to it, line 8 is the one that shows $195,000 sales tax increments for the first half of the year. And my fear that I mentioned of assuming it would be double of that by the end of the year and or next year, but it might be. And then line 13 under revenue, I had thought that the CDOT grant for the Miners Alley lighting was going to be paid to the city because the city is paying for that project and we're contributing to it. But instead, the check was made out to DDA, so we had extra revenue, but then when you get to line 64, we had an extra expense because we needed to pass that through. So contribution to city capital for the year will be that transfer of extra revenue over to the city, plus the $55,000 for the planter changes that you approved last month, and whatever the lighting ends up costing us, which will be less than the $70,000 that you approved by quite a bit because it's only one block. Everything else is pretty standard. Increment is higher than we thought it would be, and line 20, the 5 mil is just about what we budgeted. It was lagging some funds that finally came in July. So unless there's any questions about the tracker, it's pretty much on par for where we think we were supposed to be. Next big expense will be holiday lights.
which starts maybe tomorrow. So they've been talking to right-of-way inspectors, so they're getting their permits, and they'll start tomorrow or the day after, but they come in dribs and drabs when they have a crew, so you'll see a little bit over the next 6 weeks, a little bit here, a little bit there, and you'll definitely know when they're on the bridge, because that will actually be a lane closure and so forth, so that's going as projected. And also the second power washing, who was mentioning, Sarah. Power washing, I put that off a little bit for a few weeks, just because there's so much going on downtown right now with the new planters and the putting in for the lights. Like, I'll wait until some of that stuff gets done before I introduce something else to downtown. Let some of the dirty stuff get finished so they can clean it. So that, we're looking maybe starting Sunday night, October 2nd. So all as planned, and the money will be what you think it's going to be, and just, put that for the holiday lights.
Do you know at Sassafras where they've taken that all off? Are they going to put a new deck there?
Yes,
They are,
yes.
because they took out the deck and then they took out all the concrete that was below
It
it.
was structurally unsound,
Okay,
and
got
they
it.
needed to repair it.
Okay. And does anybody know of anything coming in to replace any of these businesses that are,
King of Wings is going into Colorado Plus,
where's Colorado Plus?
The,
Colorado 49, the
Cidery.
cidery.
Oh, the
11th,
cidery.
The cidery, yeah, so that's going in there, and,
Sassafras is open. Barrels and Bottles is looking for a purchase agreement for their.
but
the
she
lease.
said, was emailing with her today, and she's like, business as usual, same with Cafe 13, business as usual.
Businesses, Cafe 13 posted a big thing on.
She's not for sale.
She's not.
Right, there were rumors, and that's it.
Oh, but Sassafras is
Sassafras.
done the end of
Julia,
October.
the owner, purchased her building in Cap Hill, or no, Jefferson Park area. She purchased the building. She's moving all her staff over there so that they can open it up for dinner.
So it'll be,
They increased her rent here at this spot, and it didn't make sense financially.
So she's just moving out.
Yeah.
She's moving out.
right,
That's
and
basically-
we don't know what's going in.
Nothing's going
I
on.
haven't been told yet.
Okay. And what
Same
about
thing with
Starbucks?
Starbucks. They do have a tenant.
They have a tenant
Oh, see, I
already?
haven't heard that.
They've at least offered, I mean, they're still in lease negotiations from what I understand, but they've given the opportunity for a specific client to come in. It's gonna be a coffee shop. There might be some other little bells and whistles happening, but they're gonna keep with the same business model. I talked to the owner a couple days ago.
Thank you.
And then, sounds like, what I understood, the pizza and biscuit place pulled out of.
I have no information about,
It's very
no
quiet.
confirmation.
It's very
of
quiet.
anything. What was that?
It's just very quiet of what they're giving. Unless you hear something.
It's just nothing's discussed yet.
Change is good.
It is.
Don't fear the change.
We still need a Jewish deli downtown.
We
don't
almost
have
had
that.
one.
We have 17 sandwich shops downtown already.
We almost had one in the.
Rosenberg's, yeah.
Rosenberg's, yeah.
Is Rosenberg's?
Well,
No,
they
it
were
almost
the first
went.
one. And then, biscuit, they called it, different biscuit company, but I don't know, it's up in there, but I don't know.
Yes.
Change is good.
Okay,
Don't fear change.
no,
I'm gonna have to remember, I'm gonna write that down.
yeah, write that down.
The main things under capital projects is, by contrast with some projects, the planter project, that Five Star Concrete is doing, went very fast once we started. There is still a project to think about what to do with the cans, how to make them as attractive as possible, as well as being functional, such as some vinyl wraps of some sort. And the lighting project, I got all excited last week when we identified the locations, and the locations for poles were saw cut, but I came in today and they were not excavated yet.
So can I
No.
just say one other thing I didn't know, and that is just your fencing parts arrive on Thursday. Remember you authorized, I got that email today, the fencing parts arrive on Thursday.
Do they know, Steve? Are they giving you?
I didn't email them.
Okay.
I stopped working on Thursday of last week. It just got here. So the surface parking lot, the big mess in the parking lot between 12th and 13th is that about a year ago, city agreed with Mason Meadows Land Company that it would be a great idea to make some changes we made last year, which were cutting some breaks in the medians for when we want to have more flexibility in the parking lot, and to repave the whole parking lot, which is, the south half is under lease to the Downtown General Improvement District. And it has provisions, if the lease is broken within X years, then they pay us back money for paving, et cetera, et cetera. And frankly, to make some short-term parking on the east side, but we've taken and it will happen the second week of October, as Sarah was saying. We took the opportunity to install conduit for the street lights in the north half, as well as there were outlets that haven't worked in years in the trees, but also to provide conduit for potential charging stations in the north half of the lot. The last phase of that project is tomorrow to finish the asphalt patchback of the trench. Now, the electricity is not going to be pulled yet, but we did all the conduit. So that parking lot will be paved the week of October 3rd, the entire parking lot. But also, you still there, Jonathan? Still
Yep,
there?
I'm here.
Okay. Later in October, part of 14th, 13th, and 12th between Washington and Ford, but some of them are only between Jackson and Ford, will be overlaid, and the only block on Washington is Jonathan's block, the block of 1300. All of those are slated to happen the second half of October, and they do affect some seating areas where had some of these conversations that since they end on October 31st, the right thing to do is just to have them taken down. But planning will get together with all of the holders of those. So again, on Washington, it's the block from 13th to 14th. And I'm sorry, I don't remember which street is only Jackson to Ford and which street is a Washington to Ford off 12th to 13th to 14th. But they're short streets, and what'll happen is they'll be milled one day, all three of them will get milled, and they'll be paved the next day, and it will be a interesting day. It'll be a weekday, not a weekend, and generally they're not impassable other than for a few hours at a time when this happens.
And I'm working with Jared and John Hardy to get the communications out in more detail to the affected, well, all of downtown plus the affected business and, owners and tenants on those blocks.
When they're doing that, are they also, I know you had talked about Prospector Alley between 14 and 15 was supposed to be paved. Is that going to be kind of at the same time?
I think it will be after. I think it will be the next week, but it wasn't on the schedule last week, and I said to the guy in engineering, okay, what about Prospector Alley that you promised to pave and pay for? So yes, but I need to double check that. He had sent me the schedule and sent it to Robin also the end of the week before last, and that was my first response is, well, this is all well and good, but when is Prospector?
I've told my neighbors that it's on the schedule.
Oh. Well, it is. Just because it wasn't on the one he sent me doesn't mean it's not on there. But thank you for reminding me. So, some stuff happening.
Lots of stuff happening. Public comment.
I am checking.
Joe left.
No, ma'am.
While you're looking, I got a question real quick. Who's responsible for all the trees downtown? Like, how do we, who?
The stressed ones
Yeah.
that I've commented on, the Parks Department. Parks Department handles all the living material, and I don't remember what they told me. I think they think they're gonna have to replace a couple, but I was shocked the other day at how stressed some of them looked.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just seasonal.
Yes, I agree. I 100% agree with what you're saying.
Was there a particular tree?
It was a whole
Well, I mean,
block.
the one right in front of us around it, just for,
And there were some trees that came
Let's
down
just
on
say.
that block because of snow a few years ago.
There's at least like 2 or 3 of those trees that are dying, and I feel like it's a watering issue, like maybe the trickle water isn't working right. Like, I just want somebody to contact that I can have come out and look at it, and I figured this is the best group to ask.
Isn't
I'll help you
the
with that.
city forester?
Yep.
No, not necessarily.
Parks.
Well, so the supervisor of parks, Chad Minard, is
Yeah.
who I went to. I went to the department head and to Chad. There were other maintenance guys who would handle things like irrigation repairs, and then the city forester would choose the trees and plant them. But the right person is generally Chad Minard in parks.
Can I say one other thing, just as an add-on? So if electricity gets to the northern half of the lot towards 12th Street, I might ask the DDA to increase the holiday lighting budget to light those trees. We started doing the south half last year, but if we can get electricity this year on the north half, we'll want to light those trees too.
I think the answer would be no, because we want to tie it in and make the charging station project pay for the
Which means there wouldn't
electricity.
be electricity. But
So not this year, probably.
Okay. Any items that might affect another board or commission?
Well, I think city council, in terms of what they decide to do with a more robust consolidated grant program, could create more opportunities for DDA.
I do know that the money that goes from the city manager's budget to the CBAC to decide to give to things like family tree and those things. I'm on the committee to decide those things, and it's been a set amount for years, and we just asked to up that amount to 100,000. I don't know if it's gonna happen, but
Under my proposal, it was increased several-fold,
okay, good.
but Alex still had to do the work.
Okay, could we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Opposed.
you want to keep going. Thank you, John.